There comes a moment in every person's life when they realize something powerful, something that flips the switch inside, something that rewrites the story they've been living. That moment is when you finally understand that success isn't something you chase. It's something you attract by the person you become. And that starts with one principle. Success will follow you when you lead yourself first. Most people wake up every day waiting for someone to inspire them, someone to validate them, someone to push them, someone to tell them what to do. They wait for motivation. They wait for clarity. They wait for the right time. They wait for permission. But here's the truth. No one is coming to save you. Not the perfect mentor, not the perfect opportunity, not the perfect moment. The person you've been waiting for is you. Leadership isn't a title. Leadership isn't about followers, applause, or recognition. Leadership is influence. And the first person you must influence, discipline, inspire, and lead is staring back at you in the mirror every morning. Think about it. How can you expect the world to believe in you if you don't believe in yourself? How can you expect discipline from others when you can't create discipline within? How can you ask life for more when you're not leading yourself to become more? When you lead yourself first, you shift from reacting to creating. You stop waiting and you start building. You stop hoping and you start acting. You stop drifting and you start deciding, because leadership, true internal leadership, is a decision to step into the driver's seat of your life. Let me ask you something. Who is in charge of your emotions every day? Who is in charge of your energy? Who decides whether your past defines you or builds you? Who chooses whether today will be ordinary or extraordinary? It's you. It has always been you. And the moment you take ownership of that truth, your entire life begins to transform. When you lead yourself first, you create a standard, your standard, not society's standard, not your family's standard, not your history standard, your standard, and your standard becomes the thermostat of your life. If your standard is low, your results will always shrink to match it. If your standard is average, your life will stay average. But when you raise your standard, when you decide you're no longer available for excuses, for laziness, for fear, for procrastination, everything elevates. Your mind elevates. Your habits elevate. Your relationships elevate. Your results elevate. Your entire identity elevates. Because success follows identity, and identity is shaped through self-leadership. Success doesn't come because you want it. It doesn't come because you talk about it. It doesn't come because you dream about it. Success comes because you consistently lead yourself into the behaviors, the mindset, and the emotional state that attracts success. Leading yourself means doing the hard things without needing someone to force you. It means waking up even when you don't feel like it. It means showing up when the world is silent. It means building discipline when it's uncomfortable. It means becoming the kind of person who won't be denied. It means taking responsibility, not blame responsibility for your life. Responsibility is freedom. Because the moment you say, I am responsible, you take your power back. You can't control the economy. You can't control the weather. You can't control what people say. You can't always control circumstances. But you can always control your response. And that is where self-leadership is born. Self-leadership is the foundation of every dream. It is the architecture behind every breakthrough. It is the quiet force that shapes the extraordinary. When you lead yourself first, you stop playing small. You stop negotiating with your potential. You stop letting fear sit in the front seat of your destiny. Because here's something most people never realize. You can't outperform your self-image. You can't out-earn your belief system. You can't build a life bigger than the identity you're living in. So when you lead yourself first, you're not just changing your actions, you're upgrading your identity. You're saying, I am capable, I am worthy, I am disciplined, I am powerful, I am ready, I lead me. And when you start leading yourself like that, something incredible happens. Success begins chasing you. Opportunities that once ignored you now recognize you. People who overlooked you now respect you. Doors that were closed now open. Levels that felt impossible now become your new normal. Because success can't resist a person who leads themselves with courage, clarity, and conviction. Leadership is not about perfection, it's about direction. It's about progress. It's about choosing growth over comfort. It's about being willing to do the work when no one is clapping for you yet. There will be days you don't feel strong. Lead yourself anyway. There will be moments you feel fear. Lead yourself anyway. There will be seasons where nothing makes sense. Lead yourself anyway. Because leadership is not emotional, it's intentional. You don't lead yourself based on how you feel. You lead yourself based on who you are committed to becoming. Ask yourself today, what version of me must I step into for the future I want? What habits does that version of me have? What beliefs, what standards, what boundaries, what discipline? Then decide to embody that version of yourself, starting now, not tomorrow, not someday, not when things settle down, now, because self-leadership begins the moment you stop postponing your potential. Success comes to those who lead themselves into the arena long before they feel ready, long before the spotlight, long before the results show up. Lead yourself first, and success won't have a choice. It will follow you. It will find you. It will align with you because you didn't just chase success. You became the kind of person success belongs to. Every achievement in life begins long before the world sees the results. It begins in the invisible space where your decisions, standards, and inner dialogue live. This is why self-leadership is the foundation of all success, because your results can never exceed the standards you set for yourself. If your standards are weak, your actions will be weak. If your standards are average, your outcomes will be average. And if your standards are powerful, disciplined, and aligned with your highest potential, your results will rise to match them. Everything in your life is a reflection of what you've demanded from yourself, tolerated from yourself, and expected from yourself. You don't get the life you want. You get the life you lead yourself into. Most people chase success like it's something outside of them. They chase it in jobs, in relationships, in opportunities, in money. They believe success is something delivered by the world, something achieved when external conditions line up just right. The truth is far simpler and far more demanding. Success is an internal standard before it becomes an external experience. You don't hit a goal because you want it. You hit a goal because your standard is high enough that not achieving it isn't an option. You don't rise in life by luck, you rise by leadership. And leadership begins with the standards you hold yourself to when no one is watching. Look at any person who has achieved greatness. Without exception, they had standards that exceeded their environment. They had expectations for themselves that the average person would call unreasonable or extreme. They woke up earlier, stayed later, worked harder, thought deeper, learned faster, and pushed further. Not because someone forced them, but because their inner standard demanded it. They refused to operate below the level they knew they were capable of. It wasn't talent alone, it was leadership. It wasn't motivation alone, it was commitment. It wasn't inspiration alone, it was identity. Their standard became their compass, their engine, their discipline, their structure. Your standard is a declaration to yourself about who you are and what you accept. If you accept excuses, you live a life of excuses. If you accept delay, you live a life of delay. If you accept comfort, you live a life of limitations. But if you expect more from yourself than you have before, your life begins to stretch toward those expectations. Everything changes the moment you stop negotiating with your potential and start demanding excellence from yourself. Excellence isn't perfection. Excellence is simply refusing to settle for less than you know you can give. Self-leadership is not about being loud, forceful, or dominant. It is about discipline in the smallest decisions. It is about having the courage to do what is needed rather than what is easy. It is about training your mind, shaping your habits, and building your emotional power. It is about honoring the commitments you make to yourself even when your feelings shift. You can lead a company, a family, a team, or a movement, but none of that matters if you can't lead your own thoughts, actions, and habits. Think of the moments in your life where you held a low standard. You accepted less effort. You allowed distractions. You permitted excuses. You convinced yourself that tomorrow would be better. In those moments, nothing external stopped you. You limited yourself with internal permission. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine raising your standards so high that procrastination has no place. Imagine expecting more energy, more focus, more discipline, more courage, more consistency from yourself. Imagine refusing to let comfort dictate your destiny. That's the power of self-leadership. It flips the script. It makes success predictable, not accidental. When you raise your standards, you reshape your identity. You begin to see yourself differently. A person who leads themselves doesn't wait for perfect conditions because they trust their ability to adapt. They don't seek permission because they trust their purpose. They don't quit at discomfort because they've trained their mind to push through resistance. They don't need motivation because discipline is their core standard. They don't need validation because their self-worth comes from commitment, not applause. Self-leadership also reveals something important. Success is emotional before it is logical. If your emotions lead you, you will sabotage yourself every time it gets uncomfortable. But if you lead your emotions will eventually follow your leadership. This is why people who set strong standards experience breakthroughs. They choose action before emotional readiness. They choose consistency before inspiration. They choose growth before comfort. Every time they do, their mind becomes stronger, their identity becomes more powerful, and their standards rise again. A powerful standard is not just about what you do, it's about what you refuse to do. It's about refusing to remain stuck, refusing to operate below your capability, refusing to listen to the voice that says you're tired, unprepared, or overwhelmed, refusing to let your past dictate your future, refusing to be controlled by fear. A leader of the self rejects anything that weakens the mind or lowers the standard. Self-leadership is not a one-time decision. It is a daily decision. It is the decision to show up when it's raining, when you're exhausted, when you're discouraged, when life isn't cooperating. True leaders don't wait for perfect conditions. They create conditions through action. They don't wait for support. They support themselves through belief. They don't wait for momentum. They build momentum through consistency. Your standards shape your habits. Your habits shape your results. Your results shape your life. And all of it begins with self-leadership. You can rewrite your entire future with one elevated standard, one commitment to yourself, one moment where you decide that you are done operating below the greatness you're capable of. One moment where you take responsibility for everything within your control and stop giving power to everything outside your control. Success doesn't arrive because you hope for it. Success arrives because you lead yourself into becoming the person who attracts it. You rise to the level of your standards. You fall to the level of your excuses. The moment you choose higher standards, life responds in higher ways. Identity is the silent architect of your entire life. It shapes your beliefs, your decisions, your habits, your discipline, your confidence, your persistence, and ultimately your destiny. Identity drives behavior, and behavior creates results. This is why the fastest and most profound way to transform your life is not by forcing new habits, but by upgrading who you believe you are. You can try to change your actions through motivation, but unless you change your identity, you will always snap back to the behaviors that match your internal self-image. You will always act in alignment with who you think you are, not who you wish to be. Most people chase goals while carrying identities that contradict those goals. They want success, but they see themselves as inconsistent. They want discipline, but they see themselves as easily distracted. They want confidence, but they see themselves as insecure. They want abundance, but they see themselves as unworthy. This internal conflict becomes a silent battle that they lose again and again. They try to change the external without changing the internal. And it feels like swimming against a current that keeps pulling them back. Your identity is like a thermostat. No matter how high you turn up the heat temporarily through motivation, excitement, or inspiration, if your internal setting is low, you will cool back down to your old patterns. But when you raise the thermostat of your identity, your behavior naturally adjusts upward. You don't have to force growth. You become the kind of person for whom growth is normal. You don't have to fight for discipline. You become the kind of person who doesn't negotiate with discipline. You don't have to struggle for confidence. You become the kind of person whose actions reflect confidence automatically. Identity is built through repetition, emotional intensity, and the stories you tell yourself. Every time you say, "I'm not good enough," you reinforce a limiting identity. Every time you say, "I'm always procrastinating," you strengthen the identity of a procrastinator. Every time you say, "I'm unlucky," you program your mind to seek evidence that confirms that belief. Your brain loves consistency. It will adjust your behavior to match your identity, even if that identity is holding you back. This is why transformation begins with the story you attach to yourself. If you want to elevate your life, you must elevate your identity. You must rewrite the narrative you've been living in. You must choose a version of yourself aligned with your highest potential rather than your past limitations. You must declare who you are becoming, not who you have been. When you upgrade your identity, your behavior follows without resistance. Someone who identifies as an athlete doesn't struggle to exercise. It's simply who they are. Someone who identifies as a leader doesn't hesitate to take responsibility. It's natural. Someone who identifies as disciplined doesn't negotiate with laziness. Discipline becomes their default. Someone who identifies as successful doesn't chase validation. They act from a place of certainty. Your identity creates your standards, and your standards create your life. If you want to design a new future, start by designing a new identity. The question isn't what do I want to do? The real question is who do I need to become? When you focus on becoming, the doing becomes effortless. Your goals stop being battles and start becoming expressions of who you are. Identity is not fixed, it is fluid. It changes when you decide to change it. Many people carry identities imposed on them by their environment. Parents, teachers, past failures, social circles, or moments of weakness. But those identities are stories, not truths. You can outgrow any identity that no longer serves you. You can step into a stronger version of yourself at any moment. Identity is a choice, not a destiny. The most powerful way to upgrade your identity is through action. Action confirms belief. Action rewires your self-image. Action creates evidence for your new identity. When you act like the person you want to become, your brain begins to align with that behavior. You start telling yourself, this is who I am now. And the more evidence you create, the more deeply your identity solidifies. You must create small, undeniable proofs every day. Want to become disciplined? Do one disciplined action today. Want to become confident? Take one courageous action today. Want to become successful? Make one success-driven decision today. Identities are built through consistency, not intensity. You don't need massive action. You need aligned action. Actions that match the future you, not the past you. Identity also shapes your emotional responses. If you believe you're not enough, you will interpret challenges as confirmation of that belief. But if you believe you are powerful, capable, and resilient, you interpret challenges as opportunities to grow stronger. Your emotional experience changes when your identity changes. Suddenly, setbacks don't break you, they forge you. Obstacles don't discourage you, they train you. Failure doesn't define you, it develops you. Identity determines what you tolerate. A person with a weak identity tolerates low standards. They tolerate excuses, delays, fear, chaos, inconsistency, comfort. But a person with a powerful identity rejects anything beneath the level of their commitment. They demand more from themselves. They require more from their environment. They protect their energy, their habits, their discipline, and their growth. They don't lower themselves to match circumstances. They elevate themselves to shape circumstances. Identity is the internal blueprint that success follows. When you become the person who embodies success, success becomes inevitable. It becomes a natural extension of who you are. You stop chasing results and start attracting them. You stop forcing progress and start living in alignment with it. You stop hoping for change and start embodying change. The identity you choose determines the life you live. If you want a bigger life, you must become a bigger version of yourself. You must become the kind of person who is worthy of the future you desire. You must step into that identity today, before the results show up, before the world validates you, before the success arrives. Identity first, results second. Because when you change who you are on the inside, the outside world has no choice but to change with you. Responsibility is the turning point between living by default and living by design. It is the moment you stop handing your power away to circumstances, excuses, and external forces, and you take ownership of your life. Responsibility creates power because it puts you back in control. It shifts you from being a passenger to being the driver. When you accept responsibility, you stop waiting for life to happen and start shaping life on your terms. Every level of success, growth, confidence, and transformation is built on the foundation of responsibility, because you cannot change what you believe is not yours to influence. People often misunderstand responsibility. They hear the word and think it means blame, guilt, fault, or pressure. It doesn't. Responsibility simply means responsibility. The ability to choose your response, the ability to lead yourself, the ability to take ownership of what is within your control. When you step into responsibility, you reclaim your power. You reclaim your clarity. You reclaim your ability to act, to choose, to change, to create, to grow, to rise. Without responsibility, success becomes impossible because you are always waiting for circumstances to align before you move. With responsibility, you create alignment through action. Look at your life right now. Everything you've achieved is connected to something you took responsibility for. And everything you haven't achieved yet is connected to something you haven't taken responsibility for. If your health isn't where you want it to be, there is a responsibility gap. If your finances aren't where you want them, there is a responsibility gap. If your mindset, habits, discipline, confidence, or relationships aren't where you desire them to be, there is a responsibility gap. Responsibility is not about blaming yourself for where you are. It's about empowering yourself to go where you want to go. When you take responsibility, excuses disappear. Excuses are simply the stories we use to protect our comfort zones. They sound like logic, but they are emotional shields. I don't have time. I'm too tired. It's too hard. I'm not ready. I've never done it before. People won't support me. Life is unfair. Every excuse has one purpose: to keep you from stepping into the version of yourself that demands more. Taking responsibility dissolves excuses because it shifts your focus from why it can't happen to how I will make it happen. Responsibility also transforms your relationship with challenges. Most people resist challenges because they feel powerless against them. They see challenges as problems rather than pathways. But when you embrace responsibility, challenges become opportunities to demonstrate your growth, your resilience, and your leadership. You start viewing adversity as something you can influence, something you can respond to strategically rather than emotionally. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what can I do with this? What can I learn from this? How does this shape me into the person I need to become? When you take responsibility, you gain clarity. You begin to see what is in your control and what is not. You stop wasting energy on things you cannot change and start investing energy into the things you can. You stop fighting reality and start mastering it. You detach your emotions from external unpredictability and anchor them to internal strength. This clarity creates confidence, because confidence is born from knowing you can handle whatever comes your way. Responsibility is not about perfection. It is about ownership. You will make mistakes. You will fall short. You will struggle. But when you take responsibility, you don't hide from these moments. You use them. You learn. You adjust. You strengthen. You grow. People who refuse responsibility repeat the same mistakes because they blame everything but themselves. People who embrace responsibility evolve because they examine their actions, learn from their patterns, and upgrade their behavior. Responsibility breeds discipline. When you take ownership of your goals, you stop relying on motivation. Motivation is emotional and inconsistent. Discipline is structural and reliable. Responsibility makes you accountable to yourself. It builds a standard within you that cannot be compromised. When you raise your level of responsibility, you naturally raise your level of discipline. And discipline is the bridge between intention and achievement. Taking responsibility also shifts your identity. When you choose to own your actions, your mindset, your habits, and your outcomes, you develop a powerful internal identity, one built on strength rather than weakness, courage rather than avoidance, and commitment rather than fear. You begin to see yourself as someone capable, someone resilient, someone resourceful, someone who follows through. This identity becomes a source of pride and confidence because it is earned through action, not given through external validation. Responsibility amplifies your influence on others. People trust and respect those who take ownership. Leaders are not leaders because they are perfect. They are leaders because they are accountable. When you take responsibility for your energy, your communication, your behavior, and your results, you inspire others to rise. You indirectly give them permission to step into their own power. You become a role model not because you try to be one, but because your actions naturally speak louder than any advice you could give. Another powerful aspect of responsibility is emotional mastery. When you take ownership of your emotions, your life changes dramatically. Instead of reacting impulsively, you respond intentionally. Instead of letting fear stop you, you acknowledge it and move forward. Instead of letting anger control you, you manage it. Instead of letting self-doubt define you, you challenge it. Emotional responsibility gives you the power to stabilize your inner world regardless of what happens in your outer world. Responsibility also transforms your relationship with time. When you take ownership of your time, you stop wasting it. You stop letting distractions steal it. You stop letting indecision drain it. You start treating time as the most valuable currency you have. You begin to prioritize what matters. You eliminate what doesn't. You use time intentionally instead of reactively. And when you control your time, you control your life. Many people resist responsibility because it feels heavy. But the truth is, avoiding responsibility is far heavier. Avoiding responsibility leads to regret, frustration, stagnation, and self-doubt. Taking responsibility leads to empowerment, clarity, growth, and achievement. When you choose responsibility, you lighten the emotional load because you stop fighting your reality and start directing it. Responsibility is the doorway to freedom. Freedom is not the absence of obligation, it is the presence of power. The power to choose, to change, to act, to lead, to grow, to rise. When you take responsibility for your life, you become unstoppable because nothing can take that power away from you. Discipline is one of the greatest forces you can develop within yourself because it frees you from the limitations of emotions. Most people depend on motivation to act, but motivation is inconsistent, unreliable, and emotional. It fluctuates with mood, weather, circumstance, and convenience. Discipline, on the other hand, is a decision, a commitment to act regardless of how you feel in the moment. Discipline beats motivation because discipline doesn't negotiate. It doesn't wait for energy. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't rely on excitement. It leads you toward your goals when motivation has long disappeared. Motivation is like a spark. Discipline is like a fire. A spark can ignite something powerful, but it goes out quickly unless there is fuel. Discipline is the fuel. It keeps you moving when the initial rush is gone. It keeps you consistent when the emotional high fades. It keeps you progressing even when your mind invents excuses to slow down. Without discipline, your potential is wasted. With discipline, your potential becomes your reality. There will be days when you feel unstoppable and days when you feel exhausted, uninspired, overwhelmed, or distracted. If you depend on motivation, those days will break your momentum. If you depend on discipline, those days become proof of your commitment. Discipline is the promise you make to yourself and keep even when no one is watching. It is the internal standard that guides your actions. It is the voice inside that says, do it anyway. And the more times you honor that voice, the stronger it becomes. Discipline begins with clarity. When you're clear about what you want and why it matters, discipline becomes easier to build. But even with clarity, many people still struggle because they're waiting to feel ready. The truth is, no one ever feels ready. Readiness is a myth. Growth requires you to act before you feel prepared. Discipline isn't built through ideal conditions, it's built through imperfect action. It's built through doing the hard things repeatedly until they become automatic. Discipline is not about intensity, it's about consistency. You don't need to overhaul your life in one massive push. You need small, repeated actions that align with your goals. A disciplined person doesn't rely on emotional highs, they rely on habits. They create routines that support their growth and eliminate decisions that lead to procrastination. They design their environment to reinforce their goals rather than tempt them away from those goals. Discipline thrives in structure, and structure is created by choice. One of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming discipline is about restriction, sacrifice, or deprivation. It isn't. Discipline is about alignment. It aligns your actions with your vision. It aligns your time with your priorities. It aligns your behavior with the identity you want to embody. Discipline is not punishment, it is preparation. It prepares you for the life you say you want. It prepares you for opportunities that others miss. It prepares you to handle challenges that others avoid. It prepares you to rise above inconsistency and become the kind of person who shows up no matter the circumstance. Discipline also creates confidence. When you repeatedly follow through on your commitments, you build trust in yourself. You prove to your mind that you are reliable. This internal trust becomes a powerful weapon because confidence doesn't come from words. It comes from evidence. Every disciplined action is a piece of evidence that strengthens your belief in your capabilities. Over time, you stop doubting yourself because your actions demonstrate who you truly are. Discipline develops mental toughness. Most people quit because they're not emotionally trained to handle discomfort. They avoid anything that feels unfamiliar, difficult, or slow. But discipline teaches you how to push through resistance. It teaches you that discomfort is temporary. It teaches you that fatigue is not a signal to stop, but a sign that you are expanding your limits. It teaches you that your mind will always try to take the easiest path, but you have the power to lead your mind instead of being led by it. When you practice discipline, you build resilience. You stop crumbling under pressure. You stop retreating when things get hard. You stop letting setbacks break your focus. Discipline teaches you endurance. It teaches you patience. It teaches you long-term thinking. It shifts your identity from someone who reacts emotionally to someone who acts intentionally. This shift alone can transform your entire life. People often admire disciplined individuals, but what they admire is not the action. It is the strength behind the action. They admire the ability to delay gratification. They admire the consistency. They admire the ability to say no to distractions, temptations, and excuses. They admire the commitment. And all of that comes from inner leadership. Discipline is self-leadership in action. It is the execution of your standards. It is proof that you are in control, not your emotions, not your circumstances, not your fears. Discipline also creates freedom. It may sound paradoxical, but discipline frees you in ways motivation never can. When you are disciplined, you are free from regret because you take action. You are free from chaos because you create order. You are free from procrastination because you move with purpose. You are free from self-doubt because your habits produce confidence. You are free from being controlled by your feelings because you operate from commitment, not mood. The people who lack discipline feel trapped, not because life is trapping them, but because their lack of structure keeps them stuck. Without discipline, dreams remain dreams. Without discipline, goals stay on paper. Without discipline, potential becomes pressure. Without discipline, the gap between who you are and who you could be becomes painful. Discipline closes that gap. It turns possibility into progress. Discipline requires making choices that serve your future self rather than your present comfort. It demands that you prioritize long-term gain over short-term pleasure. This doesn't mean you eliminate enjoyment. It means you create a life where enjoyment is earned through commitment, rather than taken at the cost of progress. Discipline teaches you that the reward for doing the hard things is becoming the person capable of achieving extraordinary outcomes. Another powerful aspect of discipline is momentum. Once you build it, it becomes harder to stop than to continue. At first, discipline feels heavy. Your mind resists, your emotions pull you backward, but each disciplined action weakens that resistance. Over time, the habits become normalized, the process becomes easier, and the results begin to reinforce your behavior. Momentum makes discipline feel natural, and when discipline becomes natural, success becomes predictable. Discipline is not built overnight. It is built daily. It is built in moments when you choose effort over ease. It is built in moments when you turn off distractions and focus on what matters. It is built in moments when you leave comfort behind to pursue growth. Discipline is forged in silence, in solitude, in repetition, in perseverance. When you lead yourself with discipline, you no longer depend on motivation to push you. Motivation becomes a bonus, not a requirement. You stop waiting for inspiration and start living through intention. You stop hoping for results and start taking actions that guarantee them. You stop being controlled by emotions and start using emotions as tools instead of excuses. Discipline strengthens every area of your life. It sharpens your mind, transforms your habits, elevates your work ethic, and builds your character. It creates a version of you capable of achieving what your emotional self would have given up on. This is why discipline always beats motivation, because motivation makes you feel good in the moment, but discipline makes you powerful in the long run. When you strengthen your inner world, every part of your outer world begins to shift. Success is not something that happens randomly or accidentally. It is something you attract by the person you become. When you elevate your thoughts, your standards, your emotions, your habits, and your identity, life starts responding to you in ways it never has before. Most people try to change their circumstances without changing themselves. They try to fix the outside without addressing the inside. But the truth is simple. Your external world is a mirror of your internal world. When you shift the way you think, the way you carry yourself, the way you lead yourself, and the way you show up, the world reflects that shift back to you. Your inner world determines your perception. Two people can face the exact same situation and experience completely different realities based on their mindset. One sees obstacles, the other sees opportunities. One sees pressure, the other sees potential. One sees fear, the other sees fuel. The difference isn't the event. It's the internal lens through which the event is interpreted. When you elevate your inner world, you change that lens. You change how you interpret challenges, how you react to setbacks, how you respond to stress, and how you move through uncertainty. Suddenly, what once overwhelmed you becomes manageable. What once scared you becomes exciting. What once discouraged you becomes motivating. Elevating the inner world also reshapes your emotional patterns. Your emotions are not random. They are trained. If you repeatedly choose frustration, worry, doubt, or anger, those emotions become your default. If you repeatedly choose gratitude, courage, confidence, and focus, those emotions become your default. Emotions become habits. And your emotional habits either strengthen your progress or sabotage it. When you upgrade your emotional habits, your external results follow. You stop reacting impulsively. You stop letting fear dictate your choices. You stop allowing stress to drain your energy. You stop collapsing under pressure. You step into your power rather than your weakness. Your inner world also determines your beliefs. Beliefs are the blueprint of your life. They dictate what you attempt, what you avoid, what you pursue, what you tolerate, and what you think you deserve. When your beliefs are limited, your life becomes limited. When your beliefs expand, your life expands. Many people never achieve their potential not because they lack ability, but because they carry beliefs that contradict their goals. They believe they're not good enough, not smart enough, not ready, not worthy, not capable. When you elevate your inner world, you challenge those beliefs. You replace limiting stories with empowering ones. You recondition your mind to believe that growth is possible, that success is accessible, that you are capable, and that your future can be larger than your past. Elevating your inner world also transforms your habits. Habits are the backbone of success. They create momentum or destroy it. They build discipline or erode it. They make progress automatic or make failure predictable. When you elevate your inner world, you naturally begin to adopt habits that reflect your higher identity. You wake up earlier, not because you force yourself, but because you want to align with your new standards. You take care of your health, not because you feel obligated, but because you see yourself as someone who values strength. You invest in your growth, not because you have to, but because it matches the person you are becoming. Your habits evolve the moment your identity evolves. Your outer world also responds to the energy you bring into it. When your internal energy is low, filled with doubt, fear, insecurity, or negativity, you attract situations that match that energy. You sabotage opportunities. You misinterpret feedback. You hesitate instead of acting. But when your internal energy is elevated, filled with confidence, purpose, strength, and clarity, you attract different outcomes. People respond differently to you. Opportunities align more naturally. You make better decisions. You take bolder actions. You speak with more certainty. You carry yourself with presence. Energy is communication without words, and the world reads it clearly. Elevating your inner world improves your relationships as well. When you become more grounded, more confident, more emotionally aware, and more self-led, your interactions with others change. You stop needing validation. You stop tolerating toxic behaviors. You stop overgiving in hopes of acceptance. You stop shrinking yourself to make others comfortable. Instead, you set boundaries with confidence. You communicate with clarity. You attract people who value your growth instead of those who suppress it. Your circle becomes stronger because your inner world becomes stronger. Your decisions also transform. Every decision you make is influenced by your internal state. When your inner world is clouded with fear, you make decisions from limitation. When your inner world is elevated with clarity, you make decisions from strength. You take calculated risks. You pursue new opportunities. You say yes to growth and no to anything that pulls you backward. Your decisions become aligned with your vision rather than your doubts. As your inner world elevates, your resilience grows. Life will always present challenges, but the version of you facing those challenges determines the outcome. A weak inner world collapses under stress. A strong inner world rises under stress. A weak inner world is defeated by failure. A strong inner world learns from failure. A weak inner world feels threatened by change. A strong inner world embraces change. Elevating your inner world doesn't remove challenges, it empowers you to overcome them. Another powerful shift happens in your level of focus. When your inner world is scattered, distracted, or overwhelmed, your attention becomes fragmented. You chase everything and achieve nothing. But when your inner world is steady and strong, your focus sharpens. You think more clearly. You prioritize effectively. You eliminate noise. You stay committed to what matters. A focused mind is a powerful mind. Elevating your inner world also impacts your sense of purpose. When you strengthen your internal connection to your values, passions, and vision, your path becomes clearer. You no longer wander or drift. You move with intention. Purpose brings meaning to your actions and fulfillment to your progress. It becomes the driving force behind your discipline and the anchor during difficult times. Everything in your external world, your opportunities, your relationships, your success, your results, is a reflection of what is happening internally. When you elevate your inner world, your outer world cannot remain the same. Life begins to match the level of strength, clarity, and authenticity you carry within yourself. The higher you rise internally, the higher you rise externally. Success follows naturally because it is drawn to the person you have become.